Oh man, yeah, you and me both.
Did it kick your butt though? Like,
Oh, dude, I was laid out for 5 days.
really?
Hmm.
I've known some people, including my girlfriend, that got that, and but what I got was weird. I mean, it screwed me up for like a week, but it just was. I don't know. Didn't feel any flu symptoms. Nothing in my head at all. It was just like right here. I was just like congested and clogged up. Could barely talk. I had to do 3 shows last week, and each day I had to wake up,
Oh,
spend like 2 hours trying to put my voice together just to record.
oh man, yeah. What I had was like full blown strep throat, as bad as I've ever had it.
Ooh.
Like just brutal, hurt to breathe, hurt to swallow, couldn't talk. I was, I was miserable for 5 days, like not sleeping. It was pretty bad. So I'm still feeling pretty pretty weak. I'm stepping into the gym for the first time today after
Yeah.
that, just to get my body moving.
That makes two of
Um,
us.
yeah, but I don't think I'm not planning on being able to throw a lot of weight around today.
Right. Under promise, over deliver. Okay.
Yes.
Looks like everything's good on my end. Your audio looks good. Recording is set. All right. I'll just go silent here for a minute and then you'll hear music. Welcome into the Field Goals Podcast. I am Dan Viennes, and we're going to talk Seahawks Rams today, but also big picture because it is my distinct pleasure to welcome a very special guest to the podcast today. I guess you could call this a crossover event. Uh, Writer for Field Goals, host of the fantastic Cigar Thoughts podcast, Jacson Bevens joins me now. Jackson, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dan. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. We've been talking about this for a while, going back and forth. We finally worked it out, and I like the timing
Yeah.
of this. I like the timing of this because I feel like, well, I don't feel like it's pretty clear we're at a pivotal point in this season for the Seahawks.
Hmm.
Going into the bye, coming off that Tampa Bay win or loss. I think it was. I know I did personally, and I think it seemed like the fan base as a whole was willing to kind of write that game off, like a very experienced Tampa Bay team. A long road trip, a lot of variables there. A young team learning to deal with success. Then you go into the bye week and you come out rested, extremely healthy. Home game against a team with 3 wins, and they
Yeah.
lose in clunkerish fashion to the Raiders. Just give me your general take, and now that you've had a week to kind of chew on it, talk about it, digest it, analyze it. How are you feeling about what happened at Lumen Field on Sunday?
I think that it was a reminder about where this team is.
Hmm.
We all came into this season, well, most of us came into the season expecting something straddling a retooling slash full rebuild. We didn't know what to expect from honestly most of the positions on the roster, especially once Jamal Adams got hurt in the first game. There were question marks at both tackle positions. There's question marks at all three corner positions. There's a question mark at weak side linebackers, question mark at the safety that wasn't Quandre Diggs. There's um, question marks at running back. Like this team was as undefined as it's been in over a decade, and those fuckers suckered us in by winning a bunch of games in a row,
Yeah.
and making us think. And I don't even think this is wrong necessarily, but making us think that this team is like really good, like ready to compete now. And the thing that I always try and remind myself is like every year there are 3 to 5 teams that are really, really, really good, like objectively,
Hmm.
and 3 to 5 teams that are really, really bad objectively.
Yeah.
And then the 24 ish or so in the middle are all really close. Like these are teams that are all made up of the best football players on the planet. I don't care if you're the 3-7 Raiders or honestly the 9-2 Vikings. Like I don't think there's a huge talent difference between those two, but there is so much variance week to week in the NFL, and sometimes great games from great players is enough. And we saw that with the Raiders. We saw Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, and Josh Jacobs take over that game down the stretch. Those are those are 3 players who are better at their positions than probably any player the Seahawks have. Devontae Adams might be the best wide receiver on planet Earth
Yeah.
still. Josh Jacobs has been the best running back in the NFL this season. Max Crosby is an elite pass rusher. Seattle doesn't have that talent. And when the game was on the line, Vegas went to their champions, and it was enough. But are the Seahawks a better team than the Raiders? Yeah, I think so. I think they have a better roster. I think that they're playing better, but the gap's not that big. That being said, that was a really, really disappointing loss, because even if Seattle wasn't in the playoff picture, being fully healthy, like you said, coming off the bye, like you said, having a home game against a very beatable team, it's even if Seattle was 4-7 or 4-6 going into that game, you were hoping to see more than that. And for me, this season is still very much where are we on the road to 2023, 2024? How much more ground does this team need to make up on the Eagles and the Chiefs and the Bills of the NFL in order to be truly ready to contend? And it's just a reminder, like, hey, they're still somewhere in the middle, you know?
Yeah, I like that word. It's funny you talk about in the middle. Right before we connected, I was looking at the current DVOA rankings, and Seattle was 7th a couple of weeks ago. They've dropped down to 12th, and you talk about that middle group, in regards to parity, and they're lumped in there with New England, Tennessee, Cleveland, Green Bay, Miami, and the Jets. The Jets are 3 spots ahead of them. It's to your point. As I hear you describe that matchup on Sunday, the Raiders were also down a couple of their other elite type players. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller didn't play. Isn't that the most demoralizing thing about that game? Is that coming out of a bye with an extra week to prepare, the Raiders have 3 guys you have to prepare for, and those 3 guys beat us.
Yeah. I really would have loved to have seen them just put 1.5 guys on Crosby all game long. I think against that Raiders secondary, you can afford to keep in an extra blocker. DK Metcalf has become excellent in the mid-range. Tyler Lockett is still having a great year, and they didn't use the tight ends much anyway, And so if you're not going to throw, I think there was like 6 targets to the tight ends in this game. And if that's all you're going to do, then I think you got to just keep guys in to help block. They didn't use the running backs in the passing game at all in this one.
We didn't see that 3 tight end bunch formation at all. They just scrapped. That seemed like something didn't. That would be appropriate.
And then on defense, it's like, yes, Davante Adams is scary as hell. And what's crazy, here's something crazy, and I wish I had written about it, but I wasn't aware of it in the moment. But as more and more info started to come out from the beat reporters and some of the more analytics-minded folks, they did not throw to Davante Adams when Tariq Woolen was covering him, which is crazy. And so the whole second half, Davante was on the right side of the field against Michael Jackson. And in the last 2 drives, it was just that's the only person we're going to throw the football to, because he's the best route runner in the league. And and he showed that, and that one-handed catch was insane. I mean, that's who he is, right? You don't get too caught up about the best in the world at something making a play like that. But that they're going to run the ball. And the inability to fill gaps after like the first quarter was really, really disappointing. And you had so much time. You had all your horses. And it was like the anti-Belichick thing. I mean, the hallmark of Belichick's coaching style is that he's going to make you box left-handed the whole game. He is just going to take away the best thing that you do. And if you're good enough to beat his guys doing something that's not your strength, he'll, tip your hat. Seattle didn't do that. And that to me was really, really frustrating.
Do you think we caught the Seahawks feeling too good about themselves?
Maybe it's a very young team. I'm generally pretty hesitant to speculate on that stuff, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I just wonder in the approach you talk about, like it seemed like they put too much trust in their tackles on offense and didn't adjust to that, even when it was obvious that they were struggling in that area throughout the game. Didn't adjust their coverage. They just kind of stuck. I didn't see anything different coming out of halftime that we saw in the first half.
I I agree completely. And, you know, I do think the idea, and this is just kind of a football writ large thing, halftimes are really short. I remember seeing an interview with Peyton Manning where he talked about the idea of halftime adjustments being overrated. It's just not really a thing you have the time to do. You can tweak a couple of things, but that's what the whole week is for. Because you
Yeah.
understand what the other team is doing. The Raiders weren't doing anything differently than what they normally do. And so Seattle should be able to adjust throughout the game, and they didn't. And I think the thing that was most disappointing for me, like the offense was awesome. The
Yeah.
run
Yeah.
game is still struggling, but that was salvaged by two heroic touchdown runs. Um, the passing game has been excellent. They're number 4 in passing DVOA this year, which is just insane. And they're
Yeah. There's a
doing
lot
it
of
with
people that are trying to pin that loss on Geno, though. But I thought, a couple mistakes, but I thought he played great.
yeah, he had a couple of mistakes for sure, like any quarterback does. I do think there's some merit to his play in crunch time. Is something that Stacey Ross and I talked about yesterday on the Cigar Thoughts podcast a fair amount. You know, Geno Smith has had 6 opportunities where it's basically score or lose in his career as an NFL, or a Seahawks starter, and he's 0 for 6 in those opportunities.
Yeah.
That's not to say has never been clutch, because in a number of Seattle's wins this year, they've been up by 1 score going into their last drive, and they've gone down and put the hammer down with a score to kind of clinch it. And I think that's clutch also. But, you know, I'm hesitant to put a ton of weight into clutch performance because you're talking about small sample sizes. But fair or not, we credit quarterbacks with their ability to win in those situations. And I tend to lean towards that's more fair than not. And if that's the case, then the same responsibility's got to go on them when you don't come through. And look, Geno's the most accountable guy you could hope for at quarterback. I'm sure he would agree with this. But it's little things, right? Like, yes, okay, it would have been awesome if DK's catch didn't get overturned. That was super frustrating. But you know what? Your opportunity in overtime was even better. You
Yeah.
only needed 20 yards in overtime.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, you complete the first pass. You can point to some things. You complete the first pass, the run gets stuffed on second down, and then Fant misses a chip block, and Crosby annihilates Abe Lucas, and that's that. Okay, yeah, sure. Is some of that stuff out of his control? Yes. Is the ability to check out of a run play when there's an 8-man box and you have single coverage on DK Metcalf for like the first time all game? Is
And
that
nothing
within the
about the running
quarterbacks?
game. Nothing
Yeah.
about the running game led you to believe that play was going to work anyway.
And so, one of the things, and this is all speculation, like I really hope people aren't hearing what I'm not saying, but you do wonder if, Geno has been so autonomous this year in terms of getting to the line early and uh, checking out of certain plays, identifying coverages and reads and adjusting the play call. And he's been really, really good at that. We've seen Seattle with some really explosive plays based off of audibles and line checks. I wonder how much his performance down the stretch in this game, and also like against the Falcons, against the Saints, we're talking about these win or score or lose type drives. How much of it is colored by the fact that he had 2 really bad interceptions and a really bad sack on the final drives of his 3 losses that were all 1-score losses, when he was quarterback last year. And I wonder if there is a fear of turning it over in that situation. Maybe not. Maybe it's just bad luck. But fact remains, they're 0-6 in that situation with Geno as the starter. And like I said in the article, for me, that's kind of the final infinity stone in becoming a really great quarterback.
I agree with you. I was reading this morning, Corbin Smith, who we both know, kind of gave some pushback on that idea. And he talked about some drives to put games away, like you touched on. And I do like how he has responded from mistakes.
Totally.
We talk about the fumble against Tampa and the bad interception and the way he responds and puts drives together, or the fumble last week, 7-play drive to score after that. It's but I don't think, you can justify it in any way that you want to, but until we see that drive, it's going to be a narrative, and that narrative is only going to grow louder until he gets that opportunity. And God, it was right there for the taking on Sunday too.
Oh my God, it was on a platter. Get
Yeah.
2 first downs. It's not like you had to go 75 yards to win this thing.
And if we pull that game out, we get a field goal, we win it in overtime. The discussion's so much different now. It's
absolutely,
that game was ugly. They almost blew that, but it's a win. And now people are talking about Sunday being a trap game and a must-win game. I put a poll up on, do you think this is a must-win game? I knew what the results were going to be, but it was 100% yes. People are afraid of the Rams, and a lot of it, what it's like. You hear it, and you see the noise out there too. It's we're going to lose to the Rams on Sunday because we used to lose to the Rams in the early 2000s, like stuff like that. But this is a decimated Rams team.
Oh my God, it's so. It is
decimated Rams team playing a pissed off Seahawks team with something to prove now. Do you feel like in any way, shape, or form this is still a trap game Sunday with no Kupp, no Allen Robinson, even no Aaron Donald, no Matt Stafford? This is a shell of what the Rams are, and they weren't playing well before.
I think if they had snuck out a win against the Raiders, I would be a little bit more concerned. Because
that would be the definition of a trap game.
Yeah, I think that this team just realizes that they lost a game that they should have won. They should have won that game. They were up 7 with 3 minutes left. You get any sort of stop, and we can quibble over the forward momentum call that overturned a fumble. I think that was the wrong call for sure. Fact remains, you had more opportunities to put that game away on both offense and defense, and you didn't do it. And I think the Quandre Diggses and the Geno Smiths of this team are gonna understand that, guys, like, you got to step on the throat. And the nice thing is this team did it. They did it for a month straight. They won by 2 scores for a month straight, which is something that Pete Carroll teams have really struggled with over the last 5 years, is putting teams away. And so what you can't do in this game is let it be 1 score with 7 minutes left. You cannot introduce that level of variance. I used the analogy of dice rolling yesterday. Let's say that let's say the chances of the Rams winning are just for the sake of discussion are 1 in 3. And to be clear, that sounds like a lot. It's rare that a team has less than a 1 in 3 chance of beating another NFL team. That's just the NFL. So let's say it's 1 in 3. So let's say you got to get a 5 or a 6 on a dice roll in order to win. You got to get a 5 or a 6 more often than you get a 1 through 4. Your chances of doing that on 3 dice rolls are infinitely higher than they are of doing it on 100 dice rolls. Okay. Yeah. Seattle can't play this to shorten the game. Seattle is better with no Matt Stafford, no Cooper Kupp, no Aaron Donald, no Andrew Whitworth. Like, these guys that have made life hell for the Seahawks, they're all gone in this game. And you need to get as many offensive plays. My hope for this team, this game, is to run as many plays as possible, not to bleed the clock, not to shorten the game. You try and shorten the game when you're the underdog. You're trying to increase variance. You are trying to reduce the number of plays that you're on the field against a better team. When you're a better team, you need to be running as many plays as you can. And I really, really hope that that's what Seattle does. I hope that they come out aggressive. I hope that they come out of the tunnel acting like they're down 14-0 right off the bat.
Yeah, as much as we feel like we got to know who this team was up until this week, this is the game that'll tell us who they are, right? It's not about just winning. If they eke out a late win, even if we get that Geno Smith drive at the end, they win by a field goal and limp out of there and they steal one, the narrative's not going to be great. It's not going to be positive. No one's going to be excited about the stretch run.
Well, yeah. I think I think this is a game that has a chance to influence vibes a lot. Like, it was interesting for, if the playoffs started right now, Seattle would be out of it. But the beauty of having all 4 teams from one division be in playoff position, which the NFC East is right now, all 4 teams would be in, is they all have to play each other down the stretch. Right. So there are guaranteed losses for the Giants and the Commanders because they play
Giants
each
play the
other two more
Eagles
times.
twice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like these teams, there's guaranteed losses ahead of them. So Seattle's got a 70-75% chance by most estimates of making the playoffs. That disappears if they lose to the
Drops
Rams.
into
So
the high 30s, I think, if they lose Sunday.
yeah, so the Rams game is it should be a statement game more than a trap game. You come out and you win this thing by 17 points and you're feeling a lot better. I would love to see them be hyper aggressive for 3 quarters and then just run the shit out of the ball the way Pete Carroll wants to in the fourth quarter. I want to see the defense attack. They had 20 sacks in that 4-game win streak, and they've had 1 in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
That has to change. It's Bryce
Not
Perkins
even getting close.
No.
Yeah.
It's Bryce Perkins and the worst offensive line in football. So, and a bunch of receivers that don't get open early. Like they don't even have Allen Robinson. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
It's going to be Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, and Tyler Higbee. Seattle should put the clamps on this team. I really need to see 31-13.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do this. You like to take a wide view of things. I think that's something you and I have in common. No matter how pertinent the present day is and what's happening right now. And this season has all been about the wide view. We thought it was a rebuild. We thought we were going to be looking quarterback in next year's draft. Where do you stand right now on Seattle at the quarterback position and how they address it moving forward?
Yeah, short answer is sign Geno and roll this thing forward. That's not a 100% take, but it's probably like an 80%, 85% take. If Seattle stumbles down the stretch and they finish 8-9 or even 9-8 and miss the playoffs, and their only wins from here on out are against the Rams and the Panthers, I do think especially if the offense continues to struggle to score in crunch time, then I am reevaluating it a little bit more. But the way that I have always framed the question of do I want them to extend Geno Smith is, okay, if I woke up tomorrow, opened Twitter, and found out that they'd signed Geno to a 3-year extension, how would I feel? And for the first 6 weeks of the season, I would have been like, okay, hope this works. Kind of hope they still draft somebody. From week 7 on, I'm pretty much like, I'd be pretty stoked. I'd be like, hell yeah, because the holy grail in the NFL is the elite quarterback on a rookie contract. Everyone wants it. And this will probably be Seattle's, hopefully their last chance to draft in the top 5, top 10 for a while. So it's like, if you don't do it this year, I don't know when you're going to have the opportunity to do it unless you get lucky with another Russell Wilson or a Dak Prescott, where you're getting a day 2 guy or day 3 guy in Dak's case that has the potential to be elite. I don't think that's a great game plan. So if you do go with Geno, like that ship is sailing as far as the rookie quarterback goes. The other thing is, let's not act like that's a slam dunk guarantee. We thought we had 5 great quarterbacks coming out in 2021.
Yeah.
You had Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and Trey Lance and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. And while I was not a super Zach Wilson guy, whatever. Those are elite prospects. And I don't know. I wouldn't put any of them in the top 10. I don't know how many of those guys I'd put in the top 16, if any of them, and so it's one of those things where it's like, this is not a guarantee, because if you do use that pick, let's say the Broncos give them the 4th or 5th overall pick and there's a quarterback there, Young and Stroud are probably gone, but Will Levis is going to look amazing at the combine. And let's say you draft him and he's Josh Rosen. You're fucked. Like you are in bad shape. You're where the Jets are with Zach Wilson, where you're benching your number 2 overall pick. You're in QB hell and your defense is too good. You're winning too many games to go get another, that's the last place you want to be. So the benefit of signing Geno is I do think that he shows you, as this team continues to develop and if the defense gets better, even if this becomes a top 12 defense at some point in the next couple of years, I think you can win a ton of games with Geno Smith. That frees up the opportunity to go get a Jalen Carter or a Will Anderson with that top pick. It lets you build out the interior of that offensive line, which has been getting its asses kicked the last 2 weeks. It allows you to attack edge rusher and outside linebacker and safety and all of these other, a third wide receiver with your war chest of free agency money that you're going to have this year. So I do think that signing Geno gives your franchise a lot more opportunity to get better in a lot more ways than having to get that rookie quarterback. So right now, I think the number of rookie quarterbacks that I would rather have than Geno Smith is 2. And if you're not going to get either of those guys, let's keep it rolling.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the 21 draft, but going into this season, there were every single mock draft you saw preseason, every single ranking list that you saw, there were 5 or 6 guys that were considered first round draft picks. This was being talked about as a potentially generational draft. Things haven't developed that way. And
they're not looking very good.
No, even we went into the season, a lot of people thought Will Levis would establish himself at some point as the number 1 pick in the draft. And now there's questions as to whether he's worth a top 15 pick. So to your point,
Josh Allen is going to get a lot of jabronis drafted really high. They're going to see the big, tall guy who can move and say, we can develop this guy, but I think Josh Allen's a unicorn. I've never been a big Levis guy. So I'm hoping that, because Seattle's not going to take Stroud or Young. I don't think they're going to have an opportunity to.
Right.
And so I think one of the things I'm happiest about with Geno is it's not going to make Seattle feel like they got to reach for one of the other guys.
It's a great situation to be in. It's funny now. We're at that point in the season where now all the mock drafters, all the draft writers are coming out. Dane Brugler came out with his first one yesterday on The Athletic, and McShay and Kuiper and those guys have been doing them for a couple of weeks now. None of them have the Seahawks taken a quarterback with either of their first round picks. That's how much the narrative has changed. Yeah.
Wow.
Really interesting. And plus that, and we've touched on it already in the first 25 minutes of the show. Like, the other needs are obvious and they're glaring. And they are defensively. I mean, I feel like at this point, if the draft were held today and they took anything other than a defensive player, they might riot at the VMAC. I mean, it might be like a draft day movie type where they're picketing at VMAC.
The good news here is I literally don't think there's an option. Like, there's no, of all your key offensive positions, you already have your guys. There's really only 4 positions that you would consider using a top 5 pick on offense, and that's quarterback, tackle, wide receiver. So 3. I was thinking, multiple receivers, multiple tackles, whatever. But really, there's 3 position groups.
You're not a running back in the top 10
receiver. Tackle. No. I mean, I'm not anti-drafting running backs in the first round, but I do think that 10 is high. But okay, let's include that. You've already got your guy there too. So you're not going to draft a guard or a center in the top 10.
Not that high, yeah.
And you're not going to draft a tight end in the top 10. And so, all those positions are taken care of.
And this doesn't look like a top 10 wide receiver class either. So it's interesting. So let's talk. You just touched on something, and I wanted to ask you specifically. Let's talk about Kenneth Walker for a second. Your take on him, because he got off to the spectacular start. Guys were tossing around names like left and right. Barry Sanders and I heard some Marshall Faulk comps. Just a dynamic runner. Hasn't been that way the last couple of weeks. Do you attribute to issues with the run blocking, the offensive line, or are there some concerns still with where he's at in his development?
I got no concerns about Ken Walker. Not to say that he's perfect. He misses some holes. He looks to bounce some runs that he shouldn't. He does that 2 or 3 times a game. It sounds like he's still kind of learning his pass block recognition stuff. That is stuff. That's every rookie running back of all time. I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
I really don't. What I care about is, can you hit the home run? Are you hard to take down? How's your contact balance? Kenneth Walker is elite in every single metric about that. let's be clear. The interior of this offensive line has been getting whooped the last 2 games. I mean,
Yeah,
Ken
it was
Walker
pretty
is
hard
fighting
watching
for
Austin
3
Blythe on
handoffs a
Sunday.
game.
Yeah.
He's fighting defensive linemen for the handoff on some of these. Those 2 touchdown runs were insane. Those were insane runs. You know, Bob Condata had a great article this week. I did wonder for sure. You go and you're like, all right, here's a guy that bursts on the scene. He's averaging 6 yards a carry. He's hitting home runs every game, and all of a sudden he's averaging 2 yards a carry. All right, what did he get figured out? Did he hit a rookie wall? No, man. He was averaging 3.2 yards before contact. His first 4 games as a starter, and the half game he came in for Rashad Penny. The last 2 games, that's 0.8. All right, you're taking 3 yards, 2.5 yards off of every run before he's being met by a defender. He's still elite. Like, he's on a Nick Chubb level in terms of missed tackles forced. He's one of the hardest guys, just objectively, to bring down in the NFL already. He's 22 fucking years old. Like, Ken Walker's the man. Like, I'm not worried about him. Can he get better? Of course, but he will. He will get better. They're not blocking for him right now, and it's really hard. And it's hard for a rookie that's always been the best athlete on every field he's ever been on by, like, an order of magnitude, to not take a handoff, see 2 guys right in front of him, and try and make something happen to the outside. He's going to have to learn that everybody's fast in the NFL, and they're just going to string you out. Sometimes you just got to take the 1-yard loss and keep it moving. That's fine. That's all coachable stuff. Everything that I need to see in a running back, he's got in spades.
It'll be interesting to see how they react to that game plan wise, and how Waldron calls a game Sunday, because you're not going to, you have no answers at center. Austin Blythe is who he is. Kyle Fuller's no better. They're stuck with what they have. And he's just getting bullied on that interior. I'm so glad he doesn't have to face Aaron Donald this Sunday. That might be painful to watch, but I do wonder at what point, and I hope that they start to involve Kenneth Walker a little bit more in the pass game. There was late in that Tampa Bay game, he got a couple of key receptions, and I thought on the second Seahawks drive that ended in a field goal, I thought there were 3 plays in a row that were missed opportunities where Ken Walker's a little outlet was wide open, might have scored on all 3 of those plays, and Geno totally ignored him and was focused on the end zone and almost got picked twice in a row as a result of it. I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity so far, that he can get more involved in the passing game. It'll be interesting to see if they do that moving forward.
I totally agree. The thing about those plays that you're talking about that's nice is they are so obvious on film, right? Like, there's no way in the film session they're going to look at that and miss the fact that, hey, you had an opportunity. He needs to be part of your progressions here.
He's standing all by himself at the 3-yard line.
That's it.
Like, nobody around him.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
And those were, I think I tweeted at the time, like, those were Russell Wilson-esque play. Those are the plays we killed Russ for over the last 10 years because we'd see him every week. And I just wonder, at the time I wondered aloud that, maybe, Geno's played so well. He's had so much success that maybe he's just getting a little greedy there.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing I try to remind myself is playing quarterback in the NFL is like literally the most difficult job on the planet.
It's kind of hard.
And so we see the best quarterbacks in the world mess up all the time, right?
Yeah.
And
saw Tom Brady throw a terrible pick against us.
Yes. Like late in that game, Aaron Rodgers has played poorly this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it happens. Matthew Stafford has stretches even before he hurt his elbow. Matthew Stafford would have month-long stretches, and I think he's an elite quarterback. He would have month-long stretches where he'd have 10 turnovers. It happens, and it's not as simple as like, oh, okay, I'm going to make this one adjustment, because every play is so dynamic. And the NFL, as I'm fond of saying, is the fastest learning organism on earth. And you've got an army of coaches spending 70 hours a week breaking down your film, learning all your tendencies, and then coaching up elite alpha athletes to counter that. Like, you have to be in a position to constantly adjust. And I have faith in Geno to be able to do that.
I love the point you make about playing quarterback, because it's amazing how many fans think it's really easy. And I'm guilty of it too. During Russ's years, I'm guilty of, picking apart things that I saw during the game. But you don't have to read very far
Well, and
down.
that's not to say, it's not to say we shouldn't be critical or can't be critical.
For
Like,
sure.
you know what I mean? I just, it's something I try to remind myself when I am being critical is like, okay, just remember exactly how hard this is.
Well, and if for fun, all you have to do is post in a Seahawks Facebook group or on a message board, that you think they should just ride with Geno Smith. And it's remarkable how many fans will answer with, nope, let him walk, trade him, free up the cap space, draft a guy high and ride with him. I think people just think it's that easy.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And the cap space conversation is its own thing. But I think that Geno's shown me enough that if I woke up tomorrow and read that they had given him a 3-year extension with $50-60 million guaranteed, I would be just fine with it.
So I asked for comments on Twitter. People can react to the live stream on my Facebook or YouTube or on the Twitter account. Ask them to send him some questions and comments. And I got 3 comments here, all of them the same, exactly the same, which I find fascinating. I don't know if you want to respond to this. It's find yourself a hot girl here from Triple X 18 online is a fan apparently. So I said I would read comments on the air. That's what we got. That's where this podcast is at.
That's great. I love it.
I don't know if that's a sign of success or if that means there's just room to grow. I did get a question.
Embrace every opportunity.
Right. I did get a question last night. Someone wanted your thoughts on just the division in general. And it does seem like in some ways the window of opportunity, and this is why it's such a blessing that Geno has played to the level he has and shown that he's a quarterback you can win with, because it seems like there's a window of opportunity in the NFC West now with that maybe that salary cap bubble and that lack of draft pick bubble bursting on the Rams right now, and that the age of their roster and their better players. And then what's going on with Arizona, that feels like it's on the edge of implosion any moment. And then you have the Niners and the Seahawks on the way up, presumably. And then the Niners, especially with the addition of McCaffrey, looking as solid as ever and probably with the best defense in the NFL. Your overall thoughts on the division, not just this year because it's pretty clear cut, but kind of as it presents an opportunity for the Seahawks moving ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Rams are in hell. There's, as a football, as a Seahawks fan, it's fuck the Rams forever, right? But as a football fan, I thought it was pretty cool that they won the Super Bowl last year. Like, the gamble paid off. They mortgaged their house and let it ride on red, and it hit. But now they're paying the taxes on that, and it's awesome to see. It's delicious. Love it. Love it. And if it gets so, like, there's no hope in sight. It's not like, oh, well, we lost a bunch of picks or lost a bunch of games, but got a bunch of picks coming up, or we got a bunch of cap space. Like, they are in hell. It's hard. I think Sean McVay truly is one of the great coaches in the NFL. I don't know how. You still need the Jimmies and Joes, and they got no Jimmies, no Joes. And the ones they do are hurt. And if it chases McVay out of Los Angeles, that would be awesome. So I'm not worried about the Rams moving forward. Not worried about them this year. If Stafford, Kupp, and Donald are all back at full strength next year, we just saw with the Raiders what 3 great players can do. Yeah. And I think that combination is better than the Raiders combination. So, but I think 2024 and beyond, the Rams are not a concern. The Cardinals are dysfunctional. They're a dysfunctional mess from the Bidwells on down. How Cliff Kingsbury has remained that coach this long is beyond me.
Have you watched any of the in-season Hard Knocks?
A little bit, man.
Just enough to know how cringy he is as a lead. Just listening to that dude in the locker room, yeah. He sounds like that sideline audio. I think it was from early last year before he got hurt, where Wilson was mic'd up, and all he did, it was 5 minutes of him going, come on, believe. Come on, you guys, believe. 5 minutes of that, right? That's Cliff Kingsbury trying to fire his team up in the locker room.
It's so bad.
It's
and that's.
I don't
totally. He, I hope they keep him. Because
right.
I actually think Kyler Murray is really good. I think that with the right coach, Kyler Murray could be like elite. I think he's that good. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Oh my God, if
Let's hope
Sean
that doesn't
Payton
happen.
came in,
Yeah.
seriously, as a Seahawks fan, I really hope that's the case. But I think with Kyler, there just needs to be a guy who is like absolutely carries more respect in the locker room than he does, and I don't think Cliff Kingsbury does that. And so Kyler, all of the good of Kyler is there, but I think all of the bad is given free reign as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think they have really good players on that team. So those two teams, I'm not worried about it. They're in a tier at the bottom. And then I think the Seahawks right now are in their own tier. It's a very upwardly mobile tier. I think Seattle is good. I think they're a top half team in the NFL, which is a year ahead of what I was hoping for, like in my most optimistic projections. Love everything Seattle's got going, and they've got all the ammunition in the world to jump a tier. The San Francisco 49ers are so goddamn good. They are so fucking good at football. It's crazy. I know that they're 7-4, whatever. How many teams on a neutral field right now? And you have to bet $10,000 on it. How many teams straight up money line are you taking over the San Francisco 49ers right now?
Yeah, not many. Not in the NFC,
Two.
none. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm
like
with you. I'd
let's
take them
let's
against the
let's be
Eagles right
clear.
now.
Let's be clear. This team, which is better this year than they were last year, in my opinion, overall, was a dropped interception away from going to the Super Bowl. Like the 49ers are awesome. They are in their own tier. The gap between them and Seattle is big. It's as big as week 2 looked. And that's going to be the case for a couple of years. Now, fortunately, Shanahan's got zero vibes also. And D'Amico Ryans is going to be a head coach somewhere next year. And that's great because if D'Amico Ryans was the head coach of that team, I'd be thinking freaking 10-year dynasty run with the way they've built that roster. But Shanahan, his hallmark is that he's an offensive genius. They're okay this year in terms of like they're 14th in points per drive, which is honestly my favorite offensive metric because it accounts for pace and it doesn't get too into the weeds with analytics. How many points per drive are you scoring? And we're enough games in that you've got 140, 150 drive sample. They're 14th. Like their ceiling is so much higher than that. You know, half
Well, and
that
how much
team is Pro
that's what
Bowlers.
when you look ahead to where they're at, they're going to be. I was going to say they're going to be right back where they were to start this season, right? With the question of, do you take that now? You take that and hand it over to Trey Lance, who you've married yourself to, and you've put all your eggs in his basket. And now this, you don't even, or do you stick with Jimmy Garoppolo again? And then there's questions about his ceiling. It's as we move ahead.
Yeah, that's their problem, man. But like,
it's the same problem all over again.
I think that there are 3 elite rosters in the NFL, and they belong to the Bills, Eagles, and 49ers. And we should not, as Seahawks fans, be kidding ourselves about what it's going to take to win this division over the next few years.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, man, all good stuff. Jacson, it was great to have you on the show. Finally, we'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
And
I love that.
If you guys haven't read Field Gulls, if you haven't been to the website, if you haven't read his Cigar Thoughts column, it is absolutely required reading. And I will say this, not to blow too much smoke, but when I first started reading you, I hadn't seen a picture of you, didn't know anything about you. This a couple of years ago. I don't know. I thought you were 50 years old. I thought you were closer to my age. Because of your ability to use words, which is an underrated skill for a writer. The ability to use words. And to
I really appreciate that.
To take your thoughts on a football game and put it in sometimes poetic form. It's really, really fun to read. And it's you even cause me sometimes to look at the game a different way. And then of course the podcast to go along with it, Cigar Thoughts, listen to that. You can find that through Field Gulls. You can follow him on Twitter at Jacson Bevens. That's JACSON BEVENS. Got to make sure we get that right. Or at Cigar Thoughts. And you can follow him there. Jacson, thanks for joining me, and we'll do this again soon, all right?
Dan, I'm so glad that we were able to connect on this, man. I really appreciate you having me on. Absolutely happy to come back.
All right. Awesome. I will be back after the game on Sunday for the Rapid Reaction Show. Seahawks Rams, 1:00 kickoff, SoFi Stadium in LA. It's a quick little trip down and back. Let's see where they fit in the NFC West, in the playoff race after that game. And let's see if they can put their foot on the throats of a team that's struggling right now and get themselves back on track. Until then, I'm Dan Viennes. This is the Field Goals Podcast. Thanks again to Jacson Bevens. We'll talk to you soon.